Let's raise some big questions tonight then. Is the law on hate speech as it stands in this country simply too vague? Arrest or apology enough in Nupur's case? Who will speak up against these death threats? And does India need to review its blasphemy laws or need blasphemy laws at all? I'm joined by one of the country's leading legal scholars, Professor Faizan Mustafa. He is also Vice Chancellor at NALSAR and a top legal voice. Also joining me is Yashovardhan Azad, former IPS officer, so we'll look at the policing angle. And I'm joined by Zakia Soman, women's rights activist, who took on the entire issue of triple talaq. And she too claims that in the past she's faced threats of some kind or the other for the stand she's taken. But to you, Professor Mustafa, first, because let's look at blasphemy laws. Section 295A of the IPC says, deliberate and malicious acts intended to outrage religious feelings, insulting religion by words or by signs or by visible representation, up to 3 years in jail or fine or both. Now, in neighboring Pakistan, it can result in death, and that's pure blasphemy laws. In India, is the law vague? Does it need to be reviewed? Does it need to be relooked? And importantly, does Nupur Sharma actually fall in any way within it?
Thank you, Rajdeep. First, some 71 countries today have blasphemy laws. My personal opinion as a constitutional law teacher is that such laws have a chilling effect on freedom of speech and expression and should not be there in a modern liberal democracy. Now, even Indian Penal Code did not originally have 295A. This clause was inserted in 1927. But Chapter 15 of the Penal Code has 5 sections dealing with various aspects of blasphemy law. Pakistan, when General Ziaul Haq initiated the process of Islamization, made this law far more stringent with a mandatory death penalty if you say anything against the Holy Prophet. Now, within the Islam, Rajdeep, there is a debate. There are people who say that the Holy Quran, which mentions the capital offenses, which are just 5, does not mention blasphemy as one of the capital offense. But there are other scholars who believe that for such an offense, there has to be a death penalty. My position is that defamation of religions should not be the concern of modern liberal democracy. But hate speech should very much be on our agenda. And no one should be allowed to indulge in hate speech. Indian laws on hate speech, if implemented properly in section 153A and 153B, would have been enough to deal with this situation.
Can I just stop you, sir? Can I just stop you for that? You are telling me, for our viewers, very importantly, you're saying Indian Penal Code does not need section 295A as it exists. It is almost a mirror of blasphemy laws. We don't need it. 153A, where you resort to hate speech that promotes religious enmity, is enough. But what is the difference between hate speech and blasphemy? Did Nupur Sharma commit blasphemy because she mentioned the Prophet? Or is it enough to look at it as hate speech? And should she be, if at all, prosecuted under hate speech only?
You know, as the law stands today, Rajdeep, it may be covered by 295A. The point is that state at some point of time, realize that we would punish anyone who criticizes religion. And then the state said, well, we are protectors of religion. Now, we have crossed that stage. In modern democracy, I believe any blasphemy law would have a chilling effect on freedom of speech. But as law stands today, probably she can be charged under 295A. But what I am trying to say, that increasing punishment will not help. Intensity of the punishment really does not deter. Even death penalty does not deter. It is the certainty of the punishment which deters. If more and more people are punished under 153A, it would have the desired effect. Therefore, we should use hate speech laws rather than the blasphemy laws, which I consider to be the relic of past.
Very interesting, because remember, Nupur Sharma has been booked under IPC section 295A along with sections 153A, 153B, 298 and 505 of the IPC. But Yashovardhan Azad, if what is being said by Professor Mustafa is taken to become the law in the future. The question is, will the police understand the implications of a difference between blasphemy and hate speech? The problem is the way the police acts in this country. I'll give you the example of stand-up comedian Munawar Farooqi, who along with 4 others was booked under IPC section 295A last year for allegedly making indecent remarks about Hindu deities. Now the police is quick to seize on any aspect of the penal code because they believe that 295A will virtually ensure non-bailable offence. They'll be put in jail for a few days, as was Munawar Farooqi. Is the problem not just with the law but with the police? Do the police in this country even know the difference between blasphemy and hate speech? And in the case of Nupur Sharma, the Maharashtra police is ruled by an opposition state, so they will be very quick to target her.
In India, of course, there is a coloring of the police investigation as per the regime they serve under, as you rightly said. And therefore, under the BJP regime, there was no cases registered against her, and in Maharashtra, cases were registered under both 153A and 295A. You are absolutely right. When it comes to any kind of such speeches, I think the police takes it very, very safely, in the sense that they'll put all the sections, but this kind of fine division between the two, I think very rarely it is perceived. In the case of Nupur Sharma, it was in a debate, and when a debate stretches on, you just tend to say anything what you feel like. It escapes from her actually. It's unfortunate that she certainly should be booked under 295A because it was really hurtful. And as far as the 153A is concerned, as far as the blasphemy laws are concerned, I'm totally against it. It doesn't make any sense at all in a modern country. And in fact, I would also say that the dictators who are ruling in the name of religion are hardly the ones who can teach India how to manage our minorities.
No, that point I take, but you seem to be suggesting that it is a deliberate and malicious act, that therefore she should be charged under 295A. Is that what you are saying, that you believe it's a fit case for that?
I think it's an offensive remark, and it's an offensive
remark. An apology
remark.
Not enough?
Well, if she apologizes, definitely I think she should. In fact, I would also say that all the cases which have been registered against her in Maharashtra or other places, I don't think, because of the severe threat she faces from the hardline Islam, that she should be called even to give her statement, and they should absolutely wait till her security is absolutely foolproof, and she should be given full security. And once she has apologized, yes, then there is no...
I'll come to the apology question in a moment, but I want to bring in Zakia Soman, because Zakia Soman, when you took out the campaign against triple talaq, at that time, presumably there were threats to you also from fanatic groups within the Islamic community who believed that you were on the wrong track. Do you believe that in cases like this, therefore, the likes of Nupur Sharma also need to be protected? Rather than throw the law book, if you want to throw the law book at them, throw the law book in a manner that is transparent, that is not arbitrary, and that uses the existing laws effectively. Otherwise, you're creating a situation where she's got these death penalties against her, so the fear factor comes in. How do you see it?
Before coming to that, Rajdeep, with your permission, I want to say how I wish the government of India had heeded to the protests of the Muslims and so many other non-Muslim Indians who were protesting against these offensive remarks. It is sad that we have caved into the pressure of foreign states who are not known to be democratic. So that's a very sad development. Having said that, yes, the women who fought against triple talaq faced a lot of opposition, a lot of attacks, including personal attacks.
Can you specify? Can you tell our viewers what kind of threats did you face?
Yes, and the fact that we were all women, made it very easy for the conservatives to go after us. So I can talk about myself and say there was a WhatsApp with my photograph, which was circulated not just in India, but it was circulated all across the world. My relatives from North America were extremely worried, and they received it before we had any clue about it. So it carried my photo, and it carried my kind of a CV about my husband being from another faith background, and I married him as per Hindu rites, and I am an agent of the RSS, and my son is a self-declared atheist, and therefore I have no right intervene in matters of quote unquote Islamic faith. And this WhatsApp was circulated everywhere, and my photos were, updated periodically on this WhatsApp. And in fact, the Ahmedabad police and the Mumbai police both had an input about the threat which were posed to myself and all our other volunteers. We used to receive regularly dirty emails, with all kinds of nonsense written in that. We used to receive phone calls, and it was extremely difficult for our volunteers, who in fact, most of whom come from socially, economically deprived backgrounds, who live in the mohallas, in the ghettos amongst Muslims. So they had to undergo a lot of pressure. They had a lot of explaining to do. We had to do a lot of, dialoguing back and forth, and to clarify our position, because at that time, in 2016, a lot of things have changed now, but at that time, we were all women who were posing a challenge to the authority of the mullah, and we were interfering within in a realm which is the realm of religion, which we were not at all qualified to interfere in according to them. So I believe even as Nupur Sharma's statement is hateful, it is offensive, it is condemnable. But just the fact that, the kind of threats which are being given to her, she should be given protection. I do
So
believe
she should be given, I'm glad you're telling us what happened to you, because our viewers need to know that here is Zakia Soman, and remember, she was part of a Muslim women's rights group which was fighting against triple talaq, and she and others also faced threats at the time. Others have also faced threats. Even MF Hussain, remember, faced threats, left the country. So it is fanatics on both sides who threaten those who try to promote a certain secular value. But Professor Mustafa, if today Nupur Sharma, as she claims she is, apologizes for a statement, offensive though it be, condemnable though it be, during a TV debate, should that be enough in your view to ensure that she doesn't have to go through a prolonged period of going to courts across the country? Or do you believe she becomes a test case for seeing if Section 153A works effectively and ensures that people do not promote hate speech?
Rajdeep, I would say if we are talking of blasphemy as defamation of religions, then in any defamation, the apology is considered good enough to close that chapter. And if we follow Prophet of Islam, then he is all about mercy. He is all about forgiveness. People in his lifetime have been abusing him, and he has been forgiving them. So anyone who follows Prophet should have a big heart and forgive anybody for anything. But that is what the ideal situation is, and as you rightly said, many fanatics may not agree with.
So you're saying, in your view, an apology should be enough in a case like this?
I told you that it is a defamation of religion. If for defamation apology is good enough, here also it can be good enough. The real point is that she was, one, ignorant, and two, she intentionally did it. In fact, there is great scholarly evidence available which proves that Bibi Aisha was not 6 years old when she was married.
Can I just prod you further? Because it involves the Prophet and a direct, in a sense, statement on the Prophet, does it make the issue even more sensitive and more difficult to handle, Professor Mustafa?
Yes, Rajdeep, because if there is some cause of Muslims, then we will definitely not accept any external interference. When OIC said something about the rights of Muslims, I also made a video, and I said that Indian Muslims have their constitution, their judiciary, and they have Hindus who fight for their rights. We don't need any organization of Islamic states. But when you say such things against the Prophet and he has followers throughout the world, then I think you are crossing the Lakshman Rekha and inviting problem. Because then it is no more an internal matter of India in which others should not interfere. Because you are hurting the religious feelings of the millions and millions of people across the globe.
The fact though is, Yashovardhan Azad, that it comes back to whether the police will apply the law fairly and not arbitrarily. We had a Dharam Sansad where calls were made for killing Muslims. Person goes to jail for a few days, is out on bail, goes back and starts making the same statements. The question is, do you believe that the law is a deterrent as it stands today? Do you believe that therefore the law in a sense needs to become a deterrent, and the police in a way need to act evenly, fairly across communities, whoever resorts to hate speech, including politicians who keep getting away? They don't get prosecuted in this country.
Yeah, I don't think the law needs to be strengthened. I think the police needs to be impartial and use the law effectively and impartially against all kinds of people. You know, the issue about profit is very, very sensitive, and the remark which Nupur made certainly would hurt every Muslim. But the reaction has been totally disproportionate, and I totally disapprove of that. She should get full protection. She should not be allowed to go to any police station to give statement. And once she has apologized, the case should be finished. I think this is the hardline Islam, and one should not take lessons from OIC countries who rule these tin pots in the name of, and they made it Islamic countries. And the last point which I want to say is, yes, the Dharam Sansads are bad, but also the remarks made against Shivling hurt not only me, who was a Shiv Bhakt, but crores of people in this country. But there are no death threats, and that was made by a professor. So I think there should be some balance. And as far as Nupur Sharma goes, her case should be closed once he offers a formal apology. And I'm very happy, Professor Mustafa said, that Islam talks of mercy, and therefore she should be forgiven.
You want to also dive into that, Zakia Soman? Should she be given mercy, to use the word, as Professor Mustafa says? That is in a sense the high quality of religious beliefs.
No, so if she has apologized, she must be forgiven. But I will also say that it has to be backed by more action on the part of the BJP and on the part of the government. Because right now you are cornered and you are forced to give out an apology, but you have to walk the talk, you have to mean the apology. Not just that, the government has to do a lot to curb the kind of hate and venom which is being spewed all around against the minorities. So I think it is high time that the Prime Minister, walks his own slogan of Sabka Saath and Sabka Vikas. And I think India cannot be a world superpower or an economic superpower with this kind of religious polarization and hatred all around.
Very
so
well.
I think
It's not an isolated remark, which is the problem. And that is really, it's not just a remark that was off the cuff, because if you look at some of the remarks that have been made by various spokespersons of the ruling party, they often take this line, which is seen to be very hateful and spiteful for many. I'll give you, Professor Mustafa, a final quick word for 30 seconds. The politicians, during election time, the kind of hate speeches they resort to, they don't get arrested, if arrested very rarely. Is that the real issue? If Section 153A, as you said at the start, was used against netas, that would be the real deterrent. Put them in jail, whichever community they belong to. As I say, Hindus or Muslims, throw them into the same jail cell. Would that change?
Definitely, definitely, because politicians make such statements to win votes. If people decide to vote against them, that would be much greater deterrent than putting them behind the bars for a day. I am not a great believer of deterrence theory of punishment, Rajdeep. But ultimately, the politicians need to set the agenda. Unfortunately, today the agenda seems to be of hate rather than of love and harmony.
Those are very, very salutary words. I hope someone out there is listening. You resort to hate speech, then you must be willing to pay the cost. And it is not enough to have an apology. You've actually got to show that you genuinely want to have a change in heart. And maybe we need to start with our netas being booked under Section 153. I appreciate my guest joining me here on my talking point tonight.